Planet Institute.
Welcome to R&D Unplugged, the podcast from the Learning Planet Institute dedicated to discussing with researchers on the impact of their work in a simple way. My name is Anna-Lena and today's guest is Colin de la Higuera. He is a professor at Nantes University in France and holds UNESCO Chair in Open Education Resources and Artificial Intelligence. Welcome, Colin.
Bonjour, I'm very glad to be here.
Your research is focusing currently on the impact of artificial intelligence in education. That's a big topic. Before we get down to this, so let me ask maybe first a less conventional question. If your research had a theme song, what would it be and why?
So luckily you gave me this question to prepare, because it's some people have got intelligences that allow them to think these things and immediately say, this is the animal I'd be, this is the song I'd be. So for me, it was not clear. So I reached the conclusion that Now I'm 64 by the Beatles is fine.
If I'd been out till 2:45, would you lock the door? Will you still need me? Will you still feed me when I'm 64?
Because I'm 64, I've just been 64 a few days ago. Does it relate to the rest of the questions? The answer is yes. I mean, there's some sort of research and some sort of questions you do when you reach, let's say, a more mature, ripe age.
Okay, then maybe we can find more connections to that song, because I actually don't know it, through the questions. Let me start with my first question. What inspired you to pursue this particular research topic you're working right now on?
So time. So there's my first connection, right? At time. I didn't start there. I started doing just research in something close to mathematics, which is called theoretical computer science. And that led me to doing theoretical computer science in the field of machine learning. So we may know that machine learning is that set of technologies, techniques that are behind artificial intelligence. And all that was just, sort of thing that you do as a researcher. You do the research you're told, you get good at it, you publish, you go to conferences, you meet other researchers, you build networks. And little by little, we started doing this until at some point, these sort of technologies, started working. So in many cases, the fact that what you're doing works is in itself a satisfaction. You're thinking, I haven't wasted my whole career doing something that's no good. So you could have been satisfied. The problem with machine learning and AI working, let's say 2015, was that it worked at a price. And the price was that a lot of money came into the big techs thought, right, we can make even more money with this. And so those researchers that have spent, say, 20 years of their life work, some of us said, 1 second, that's not what we've been doing research about. It's not for big money to make more money. So a number of people, spent energy trying to divert AI towards, let's say, social good. That was the expression that was used. And in my case, it was towards education, because it was a great field. So how can we use AI for education? And if possible, not do it in such a way that it benefits to the few, but that it benefits to the most.
I think that especially in today's time where we have all these big techs investing millions, billions of euros, that's a really nice approach. And it leads me to write my next question, because you mentioned already you wanted to do AI for social good, you especially in education. How does your research contribute to the issues that the world is facing right now?
I think it contributes only indirectly. So directly, I haven't produced a theorem or a piece of software that suddenly everybody is using and is doing things with. I think that, and again, this relates with my title, the age and the sort of thing you do at my age, which is think about stuff, think about questions, argue with other researchers, spend a lot of time with philosophers, not just with computer scientists. And then from there onwards, try and sort of lead a sort of more tactical approach, which is once we've understood what we would like to say, how we would like education to shift, to move, to integrate or not integrate, Then the tactical bit is about going out there and sort of speaking to the right people. So the right people, it doesn't just mean the minister. Actually, I never speak to the minister, but speaking to people in the ministry, to teachers, to parents, to perhaps journalists. And that's how you basically have an impact. It's a very indirect impact. It's a non-measurable impact.
I think I heard you saying that you also contribute to the SDG 4, essentially to education. Maybe you could address this a little bit more.
So yeah, when around 2015, a number of us started working on trying to do something good with AI, those who were interested with what we were doing, UNESCO. And UNESCO started just coming to the same events as us and then gave the team of what we were doing a very nice prize. And after a while, they sort of suggested, more or less, that we should work for them. So working for UNESCO can mean for some people to be actually employed by UNESCO, but for other people in universities, it consists in asking for UNESCO chairs. And so you ask for UNESCO chairs, which is just asking for a label you can use, and also saying, okay, well, I'm sort of prepared to help you in two different ways. The first way is, when you do have some ideas that you want to defend, I'll be one of the ambassadors out there sort of fighting for your ideas. But the second thing, which is at least as important, is saying, and probably to have these ideas in 5 years' time, I'm prepared to be one of those who does the thinking and the writing of the future ideas. For some people, a description of UNESCO is the think tank of the United Nations. Okay, so it's the place where these ideas, specifically in the fields of UNESCO, so the E of UNESCO is education, the S of UNESCO is science, and the C of UNESCO is culture. So those are three pretty broad, pretty important fields. And so in those fields, UNESCO has developed some different tools, will develop recommendations, will develop sort of, reports, and will help the ministries and the countries all over the world to develop their own policies. So that's part of what we're doing. And one of the main tools that UNESCO sort of has implemented in order to try and sort of push the Earth in the right direction has been the SDGs, the Sustainable Development Goals. So there's 17 Sustainable Development Goals, and one of these is called SDG 4, which is education for all. And education for all is where I think the two key issues that UNESCO puts forward there is one, open educational resources. In other words, making sure that the knowledge that we're passing in schools is free, that you don't have to pay for knowledge. So that's clearly what we think important. And the second thing is teachers for everyone, because at the level of the planet, we're missing so many teachers. So perhaps in both cases, AI can play a role without going to the extreme of saying we want AI to replace teachers, but perhaps, and especially in the cases where we're missing teachers, perhaps AI can help train teachers, make teachers more available, or all sorts of things.
Okay, so if I would ask you about actually a specific problem or gap you are addressing in education, it could be the lack of open resources and the lack of teachers, right?
Yeah, clearly. No, that's it, yeah. And the lack of open resources can be dealt with through convincing teachers to share, but it also can be dealt with by helping or working more from a computer science perspective. Let's see how we can develop platforms or open software that can help teachers to edit, to share, and to do things like that. It's not that obvious. And so both approaches are interesting. Helping people to share either through sort of working on the legal aspects or working through the social aspects or working through the economic aspects. Why share if, where does the money go? How does it? And then on the other hand, yes, the question of teachers, where can we help to train teachers? Can we make teachers get hold of better material to be trained earlier? All this is part of the equation, indeed.
Thank you. You mentioned already now a lot of examples. What were maybe some of the key findings or insights from your research you would like to share today with us?
Let's see. So one of them is about AI in education, is about the teachers. So if we're thinking teachers, we're thinking that the teachers have to learn, have to train, have to get into AI. And they're not allowed to say, I'm not interested. This is a technology I just don't like. It's very different from previous technologies because huge difference is that the kids, the learners, are using it. So a teacher who doesn't understand how their own pupils or their own students are using it can't be a good teacher, because it's missing out an essential component of learning. So you can't teach if you don't understand how the other person learns. So that's the first thing. So we've got to help the teachers with this. We've got to provide sort of teaching at different levels, teaching for experts, for people who already know things and to go further, for beginners. And we've got to teach both about how to use AI, but perhaps even more importantly today, how not to use AI. Right? Because AI is trying to sell itself as such a sort of tool that can be used for everything, that it is tempting to say, okay, well, just let the AI do something, and so do everything. So even learning how to not to use AI is something that matters. So that's one example. It's helping teachers. So we've got different programs, we've got different projects. One of them, for example, involves how does a teacher make use of data. Right? There's a lot of open data out there. Teachers should be able to produce their own graphs using AI. Right? So go and fetch some data about a relevant problem. If you're a teacher in geography, perhaps data from geography, or if you're, in every field there's now data you can go and exploit. And AI can help you do it, provided you have got enough understanding of it. From the pupils and the students' point of view, the two main things we're working on is one is what are we going to teach these? How do we learn? How do we get into AI? So what should we be teaching an 8-year-old, a 9-year-old, a 10-year-old, and then later a 14, a 15, and then later? So here we get asked a lot of questions like, should we be teaching prompting at the age of 8? My answer is no, but it can't just be no and nothing else. So it has to be no, because, and then what can we teach to an 8-year-old? And there are things that we can start teaching to prepare them to this AI world, to prepare them to understand later the perhaps more complex issues of learning. So that's one of the big things. And one of my favorite topics in this moment is the question of assessment, which is a topic that is worrying enormous amount of people, firstly the teachers, who just don't know how to evaluate anymore and are just getting a bit fed up with evaluating and just correcting exams that have been written by AI, and then being told, oh, you should have done differently, and not really understand why a different approach would work. So there's a lot of things that we should be doing. So we work on that, but it's a multifaceted type of question. It's not just the teachers. We've got to involve the parents, because if the parents don't understand what's happening, be contradicting the teachers, and that's just not going to. So we've got to work with everybody on these things.
There's so many points I want to ask here. I think we have only limited time, so I have to constrain myself here. You mentioned just quick, I found that interesting, that you would like to teach all levels of teachers how to use AI, but also how to not to use AI. What about also teaching with AI? Did you have already experience with that? How can we actually prepare teachers using AI in their teaching? Did you get experiences feedback from the teachers?
So we've got all sorts of experiences, but for the moment we haven't got policies. So typically, for example, there's situations where people will say, the teacher is not allowed to use AI. If the teacher is telling the kids to not use AI, the first thing the teacher should do is not use AI. And we've heard, parents come up and say, I can't understand why the teacher uses AI. He must be very lazy. And this is stupid. I mean, there's a whole difference between an adult using AI and a young child using AI. When you're an adult, you're supposed to know what you're doing, and you're able to actually delegate a task that you do know how to do yourself. So you will be able to then keep control and exercise your critical thinking on the result. And so you can sort of do it in sort of a safe mode where you're just delegating to be able to spend your time on something else and then sort of pick everything together and do something. When you're a kid, it doesn't work that way. Sadly, in many, many cases, the way of using AI by 12-year-olds, 13-year-olds, sometimes it's even 9-year-olds, 10-year-olds, is just get the AI to do the stupid homework instead of me, right? Which then raises a lot of other questions, right? Why is there homework in the first place? But even if we accept for a minute that there is homework, the fact that the child is just going to use the AI to do the homework instead of doing it himself, so not as to help them do it, but to do it instead, that's of course a big mistake. So there are huge differences there, and so the teacher is allowed to use AI to do things, and there are all sorts of activities a teacher can do with the AI outside the classroom, meaning to prepare their lectures. So using AI inside the classroom is a much tougher issue in between things, because when you're using the AI, you never really know what it's going to be. Okay, AI is stochastic; it's not deterministic. So taking the gamble of saying, okay, let's give a demo, and then of course something very strange happens, and you've got to still react to what is happening, means that you're actually understanding quite well how AIs work.
You need to be super flexible, actually, as a teacher,
Yeah.
if you actually work with that.
Yeah, but you've got to know your field sufficiently well to say, okay, now here comes in a new word that I'm supposed to know, so I'll be able to explain what is this word that is. So I've really got to know my field very well, but also I've got to understand, so be able to quickly make a sort of a mental note, a mental understanding of what has happened. Why has the AI generated this particular answer? So if not, you're just saying, okay, AI says this. I don't know. Perhaps it's true. Perhaps it's not true. So unless you're doing it as an activity, saying, okay, let's do some fact checking and go on, let's go and check. Everybody go and check. Use tools. Perhaps there's some useful tools both on the online and offline that we can use to go and check what the AI has said. This is an interesting activity that's been done in history classes, where you ask the AI to generate text on a period of history, and then you get the kids in fact-checking mode. And they've got to go and find all the different errors that the AI has made. It works nicely.
Yeah, you actually also foster the critical thinking. I think it's a great
Yeah.
activity.
Yeah.
So let's take these key findings and many insights you've just shared with us now to the real life. How do you make the bridge between these results now, so from your research, and real life? Maybe you have an anecdote or story where your research actually directly impacted or even changed someone's life.
I think it changes the life of many people. I mean, there's lab work to try and build all this. There's a lot of reading. There's a lot of discussing with the researchers. So it is a research of that sort. We don't tend to do learning labs with really, really constructed activities with the pupils, but we do have workshops with pupils. So where the impact happens is when we communicate the results. So the way we communicate the results is, instead of communicating them in research journals, so this is a choice, right? I mean, I've done many research papers in the past, but I thought that's not where I want my research now. So we're going to write these results on a blog or in different talks. So since I'm lucky enough to be invited to give talks, well, those are places where I'll be able to relate, explain to people, tell them this is what we're finding, and then have a discussion and see what the reactions are. And I do believe that people's life changes when you tell them, for example, the economics of AI and saying, look, don't be naive. You think that you're thinking this, but you're not thinking it. This is basically industry trying to sell you a product that is making you think this, but there's no reason to think it. One simple example is one of the key messages of AI, of the AI industry, is saying AI makes you save time. Right? Thanks to AI, you save time. But basically, and people will say, that's the reason for which I want to use AI. And when I'm saying people, it can be people like researchers. And then you think, 1 second, why should a researcher say it's a good idea to save time? Right? If there's somebody I don't want to see taking shortcuts, that's a researcher. I think researchers should accept to make errors and to try the wrong approach and then come back onto the right one with a profound understanding of what they're doing. But at this moment, that's not happening. What's happening is researchers are saying, oh, thanks to AI, I'm saving time. And then the next question is, what are you doing with this time? Oh, well, I can publish 3 times more papers than I used to be able to publish. So the result is ridiculous. The result is absolutely, that doesn't work. And the second population for which saving time is nonsense is for learners, right? When a kid sort of is able to save time and says, oh, I'm using AI because it saves time. And that's my next question is, so what do you do with the time you've saved? Oh, I can go on TikTok. So you think, brilliant, this is absolutely brilliant. I mean, this is well, it's not the only answer. Once I did have one kid age 15, and she said, no, thanks to that, I can go back to my book. So yeah, I might, I can buy that. I can think of that might. But you see, this argument of saving time corresponds to nothing. I mean, it was not something super important 10 years ago. That was not something that we were all thriving. We all knew we needed more time to do, but it was sold to us. It's the packaging, right? The saving time.
I think especially for learners, because saving time also means interrupting the learning process. So you cannot actually really learn and get into a topic, I guess, because you make actually the shortcut through AI.
So there are, in this moment, one of the fundamental things that is happening is that the cognitive sciences are really coming deep into the debate. And things like what you just said are starting to be documented, and we're seeing that. We're seeing other things. We're seeing, for example, one of the things that we're seeing is that the false impression of learning. So people will go through some learning material, and in such a superficial way because of AI, and yet at the end they have got the impression that they've learned something. And then if they are tested, we know that they just haven't learned anything at all. So the answer is yeah. It's time, and it's the way it's done. AI functions through measuring optimization, and you're going to try and optimize things like trying to, at the same time as they want time to be saved, they want to maximize the engagement, the user engagement. So how much time a person spends behind the screen. So you want time behind the screen that will prove that the person enjoys learning, because look, they spend behind the screen. But at the same time, we want the person to have that impression that they have saved time. It's an interesting equation.
Yeah, I also saw studies who showed even when they do the exercise and it actually helps them to solve the exercise, the exam afterwards, the results are horrible. It's horrendous. So that's why actually my question, and I know I have to cut it short, we talked about the teachers before, but now how does all this influence the teachers on actually finding a balance between maybe teaching AI also to the students, but still supporting their learning? It's a super hard job, I find, for nowadays teachers.
Yeah, no, it's super hard, and it's made even more difficult because we're still in a moment where the policies are not clear. So it's becoming urgent to have policies. It's difficult to have policies because, of course, whatever policy you choose, you're making a decision towards, do we start using AI in the classroom? What AI do we use in the classroom? In the case of France, there's obviously an issue of using an American AI or using a French AI or a European AI. So there's so many issues there. So building policies is actually is really difficult. So for a moment, it's been about in France, at least, let's wait. Let's try and see if a certain number of things settle. At the same time, it's good to have waited because, as I mentioned earlier, the really hard stuff, the stuff in the cognitive science, is only starting to emerge now. It doesn't mean that these guys were not doing research before, but it's taken time for this research to sort of reach the places it should reach. So we're starting to have enough information to make decisions. And I'm supposing that in France, but in the rest of the world also, when I at UNESCO, decisions about policies are going to be taken in the next few months because we have to move on.
Well, it's happening right now. So yeah, we need the policies.
We need the policies. If not, the teacher is very uncomfortable, doesn't know what to do, what not to do. So the policy roughly today is saying, yeah, you can experiment. You're allowed to make experiments, provided you're, of course, respecting European laws and the AI Act and GDPR and things of that sort.
Let me ask you my last question for today. Let's pretend I'm 20 years old and I want to change the world for the better. Why should I engage in research? And why should I choose your specific research topic?
So now I remember this question because as I said earlier, you had sent us some of these questions before. This is a very difficult one. I mean, I'm not sure I would engage in research. I gave a talk today where I tried to explain that if I'm allowed to speak freely today, it's because now I'm 64, because I've got the career behind me, which allows me to. gives me a sort of authorization. So I'm not sure that I think engaging in research is a respectable and interesting life where you do all sorts of exciting things. And as to you're not going to be working as a researcher on the same topic all you move around, because you're learning a way of doing things, a way of addressing the world. When you hear something that somebody says this is true, then as a researcher, you're immediately thinking it probably isn't. And so I'm allowed to go into it. So it's an attitude towards life of never taking anything for granted, never taking anything as the absolute truth. So if you like that sort of thing, I suppose that research is the right way. So that's the first part of the question, is why engage in research? And so why look at AI and education? I think that it's a lovely balance act in between social sciences, because you're finding the education sciences on one side. And I really strongly believe that AI is about science, not understanding how computers work, how algorithms, the role of data, what is an optimization problem, how non-deterministic happens in machines, makes the debate, in my view, flawed. So somebody who is interested in sort of sharing a view of the world which is just not just one-sided, only from the social sciences side, or from the physical sciences or the hard sciences, we say in France side, then this is a sort of topic for that person, because the questions require to understand both points of view.
I hope this inspires many out there to actually pursue this, because I think this something comes up more and more. We use AI. AI is such a technical topic. I see it here at the Learning Plant Institute more and more. These disciplines are just coming closer together. We have to tackle it from different angles. So thank you for this. I think that actually wraps up perfectly today's episode of the R&D Unplugged podcast. I'm Annalena, your host. A huge thank you to our guest Colin de la Higuera for sharing his valuable insights and expertise with us today. Thank you so much, Colin.
Thank you. Merci. Au revoir.
And also a big thank you to all our listeners who joined us for today's episode. R&D Unplugged is a Learning Plant Institute podcast. This episode was produced by Annalena Neurohr and Shahab Nastar, with recording by Edouard Picard and editing by Jean-Marc Sauvin. Don't forget to subscribe to our podcast so you never miss an episode. You can find all our podcasts and further information about all our activities on the website at learningplantinstitute.org/podcast. That's it. Thank you for listening, and we will catch you next time.
Learning Planet Institute.